Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on Our News.
Our News is on site of that tragic plane crash that happened right here in Rock Sound, Eleuthera.
The Prime Minister tight-lipped about the increase in value-added tax.
The budget debate heats up as the government and the opposition spar over VAT.
Bahamas Contractors Association is predicting a decrease in demand for their business as a result of that VAT hike. That story coming up.
Our News is brought to you by Lloyd.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, the families of 3 South Carolina men are preparing to make their way to Eleuthera to collect the remains of their loved ones just one day after a fatal plane crash in Rock Sound. Investigators still don't know what caused the crash, but today began their investigation searching for any additional remains. Our Kyle Joaquin was at the site today and has more. Kyle?
Well, Christina, this is all that's left of that tragic incident yesterday. If you zoom in over there, there's the plane's engine over here, a part of the propeller. All signs of a tragic event that claimed the life of 3 yesterday.
The charred remains of a twin-engine Cessna 421 lay scattered throughout bushes a mile north of the Rock Sound Airport, the result of a plane crash around 4 p.m. yesterday that would leave 3 South Carolina men dead. Their bodies burnt beyond recognition and found thrown about the wreckage. The bodies were removed around midnight. Chief investigator at the Air Accident and Investigation Department, Delvin Major, says based on what's left, no one could have possibly survived, and it will be a while before anyone knows exactly what went wrong.
It's hard to say because tomorrow, once the other experts arrive, we're going to be going through actually moving parts and documenting, so that can take anywhere from 6 months to a year.
From the main road, we walked nearly 2 miles through bushes to get to the crash site. The tail of the plane, basically the only recognizable part, along with pieces of the propellers and the window frame. The plane reportedly burst into flames upon impact. The plane, based on eyewitness accounts, only airborne for about a minute.
The aircraft took off and it was reported that the aircraft may have crashed. So we're still documenting, so I really can't say exactly what happened, but we do know shortly after takeoff, the aircraft did crash.
Now, even a day after the crash, firefighters were still in bushes near the site trying to put out any possible flames.
As pieces of the plane scattered in bushes, so did the flames, which firefighters worked well into the afternoon to put out, nearly a day later. Bernard Miller was shocked to learn of the incident as the pilot Todd Crawford, a father of 2 teen boys from South Carolina, stayed at his parents' apartments whenever he came to town. Crawford had brought 2 friends along for a fishing trip. The 2 families were said to be very close.
Yeah, they're taking it quite hard. My mother, she didn't go to work today. You know, my father, he runs a little resort. I think he isn't doing anything today. You know, they're just right there laying down, trying to catch themselves, you know.
But through the grief, Miller is somewhat grateful. Both of his parents were supposed to be on that ill-fated flight.
Both my mother and father were supposed to be on that plane, but unfortunately, my mother, she couldn't get any time off. You know, fortunately, she couldn't get any time off. Wow. Yes, she would. Both of them would have been on that plane as well.
A rep from Continental, the engine's manufacturer, as well as Cessna, the plane's manufacturer, are set to arrive on the island Thursday morning to begin their investigation.
Now again, Major says it can take anywhere from between 6 months to a year to determine the exact cause of this crash. But for now, reporting from Eleuthera for Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Kyle. Well, as frustration mounts over the Free National Movement's about-face on value-added tax, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis asserting today, things change, I used to be £10. Minnis was today pressed on the apparent lack of consultation on the 2018-2019 budget presentation. Here's Jillian Gray.
The move to increase value-added tax from 7.5% to 12% has been met with much opposition. Well, when asked about the controversial move today, the Prime Minister gave this response.
My job is to save
The Minnis administration has come under heavy fire from Bahamians, the business community, the church, gaming house operators, and union leaders over its decision to nearly double the rate of value-added tax to 12%, while also raising other fees and taxes. The move comes 4 years after Minnis and other FNM MPs voted against the VAT bill, which paved the way for the implementation of VAT at 7.5%. The Bahamas Chamber of Commerce claims the increase will result in severe disruption to the Bahamian economy, further complicating the existing VAT system and related processes. As reporters trailed behind him on his brief walk from the House of Assembly to Churchill Building, the Prime Minister gave a very brief response to the budget backlash, insisting he will address the matter during the budget debate, which began today.
What do you say to the complaints about consultation on the increase in the VAT?
You get everything when I speak.
Any particular reason why even some MPs didn't know about the VAT hike?
You get everything when I speak.
Despite mounting criticism, the Deputy Prime Minister has said the government remains open to all viable alternatives to the VAT increase. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
And amid criticism over the VAT rate hike, Finance Minister Peter Turnquest announcing in Parliament this afternoon that government is extending the VAT exemption on electricity bills from $100 a month to $200 a month. The exemption increase is expected to benefit 63,000 Bahamas Power and Light customers, as well as Grand Bahama Power customers. Meanwhile, as Bahamians sounded off on social media on VAT exemptions and the tax hike, Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson took to Facebook to defend the move and blasted the former government, which he accused of 4 downgrades, a massive run-up of debt after VAT implementation, an inability to get Bahamar open, and persistent scandals. Well, Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest kicking off the budget debate in the House of Assembly this morning, sparking a heated back and forth between the Finance Minister and Opposition Leader Philip Davis. Turnquest, who in opposition slammed VAT, now says there's no shame in changing positions, as he insists the only hypocrites on the floor of the House of Assembly are the PLPs. Jasmine Brown was in Parliament and filed this report. Jasmine?
That's right, Christina. The Deputy Prime Minister accused the opposition of crying crocodile tears when it comes to VAT, as he insisted they should understand more than anyone why the Minnis administration did what it did.
They're playing games with the Bahamian people, just like they're playing games today, trying to be cute about this VAT, this increase in VAT. Oh, I won't reduce it. I don't think I can reduce it. I don't know. We'll see what the circumstances is. Playing cute. Knowing what they have done, knowing their part in this run-up, and knowing what needs to be done. Mr. Speaker, it's wrong.
Turnquest was responding to Davis, who failed to commit to returning the value-added tax rate to 7.5% should the PLP win the next general election. Turnquest accused Davis of waffling on the issue when our news team pressed him on the issue at the monthly press conference on Tuesday. His accusation prompted Davis to jump to his feet and slam Turnquest for what he called a baseless assertion.
There's no need for explanation.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes.
That's what I said.
The chair recognizes. Honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I am saying is I'm demonstrating responsible opposition, unlike them who was very irresponsible in their demonstrations to what we're going to do. What I said, Mr. Speaker, is that I don't know, when I assume office, I don't know how they're going to leave it. I suspect it's going to be well, they left it in a wheelchair. He left it in a wheelchair. I might meet it again in intensive care.
Turnquest announced in Parliament last week that the government intends to increase VAT from 7.5% to 12% on July 1st. The announcement has been met with intense backlash, which has forced the DPM to spend the last week publicly defending the move. The proposed VAT hike has prompted some to call FNM hypocrites after both Turnquest and Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis voted against VAT while in opposition. Today, Turnquest defended his change of heart, insisting there is no shame in having a change of one's mind.
They tried to make this case that you said this in 2014, so you must stick with it. Regardless of what happens, you must stick with it.
Things change. I used to be.
And so and there's nothing shameful about changing your position based upon the facts as they change. There's nothing shameful about that.
God changes.
I mean, who among us has not had a change in a position once we find out some circumstances.
Now, despite what some may say, Turnquest insists the government did not take the easy way out, as he insists the Minnis administration will deliver on its promise of the people's budget. Reporting from the House of Assembly for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Jasmine. The Bahamas Contractors Association is predicting a 40% drop in business as a result of government's planned VAT hike. Jared Higgs tells us more.
We looked at the statistics provided from the Department of Statistics, and we saw that there was a definite decrease in our amount of activity after the implementation of VAT in 2014-2015.
Based on those numbers, Bahamian Contractors Association President Leonard Sands says he predicts a drop of up to 40% in construction business as a result of the proposed 60% increase in value-added tax.
Sadly, we know from the facts, from the data, that the sector will see a decrease of probably about 30 to 40% of their activity, because the banks, when offering you a mortgage, they tell you this is your threshold at which they're willing to extend your mortgage. If you increase the cost up outside that threshold, they're not going to be able to extend you that mortgage. That means that a contractor won't be able to provide the house for you.
The former F&M candidate says the reality is that many contractors will be forced to close their doors.
In 2014-15, we noted about maybe as much as 7 to 10% of contractors in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas closed their doors with 7.5% VAT. We have a register of contractors who are no longer active. We call the numbers out of service, out of business. And I'm telling you that we have to face the reality that there will be some who will not be able to manage to pay the increased costs associated with their business, transfer those costs to their clients, and those clients are just going to be in a position where they can't do the work.
Sands also questioned what would happen to contractors who entered into deals prior to the announcement of the increase in VAT. They say now they'll be subject to higher costs.
The real concern that we want to reiterate and express to the Minister of Finance, we would like there to be a consideration to our sector for the contracts that are already engaged, contractors have out there with lending institutions and or the government. And when July 1 happens, they're going to see an increase in costs that they have to remit taxes on, but they didn't adjust for that in their pricing because this got caught in the middle of their project. That will put a lot of construction companies and businesses in a very, very bad position, and we would like there to be some type of waiver.
Sands predicts that the higher VAT rate will also result in less lending from the banks, thus resulting in fewer customers approaching contractors to build homes and other buildings. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
In other news, Education Minister Geoffrey Lloyd is calling the fatal shooting of a second-grade student at Columbus Primary School a tragedy for the country.
Our country has experienced in the day or so of the untimely, tragic ending of the life of one Cameron Cooper, who was a student at Columbus Primary and a resident of Wilson Tract.
According to police, 6-year-old Cameron Cooper was shot in front of his Piper Lane home off Wilson Tract after he was hit by a stray bullet fired during a drug deal gone bad yesterday morning. Cooper died in hospital. Hours after, police issued a wanted bulletin for a man and a woman wanted in the investigation into the shooting. The two suspects were taken into police custody and are currently assisting police with their investigation into the fatal shooting. Lloyd told parliamentarians today that he visited the school this morning and met with Cooper's grieving classmates.
But I asked them, how many of you 6-year-olds would have seen a gun? Every hand was raised. Said, how many of you in your neighborhood would have heard what you would think of as gunshots? Every hand was raised. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me take you back to my childhood at 6 years of age. Would not be able to identify a gun, would probably have never heard a gunshot. But in that classroom, approximately 24 students, every hand was raised.
Still to come on Our News, PMH staff to receive counseling following last week's Labor Day tragedy. Plus, one body cam contractor says the tools are needed for more accountability. That and more when Our News returns.